Welcome back to Cop to Corporate Life After Law Enforcement. I'm your host, Sam Tierney, and on this podcast, we share real stories of officers who have traded in the badge for a new chapter in the corporate world. Today, I am joined by Chris Howell from Flock Safety. He is a former cop and has recently spearheaded an employee resource group specifically for law enforcement at Flock Safety. We'll talk about his journey in law enforcement, what it was like to step away, and how he has built a new path forward. So, Chris, welcome to Cop to Corporate.
Thanks, Sammy. Super excited to be here. Very excited.
We are so excited that you are here too. So let's just get right into it. So take us back to the beginning of your law enforcement journey. So you worked at a large department, moved to a smaller department, and then, I'm sure that that was quite the transition too. So what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so I worked at a very large agency for several years and really loved the work. Really loved like the action, like running down, doing bad guy stuff, and like being able to just really make like a positive difference. And it's like also just seeing like the community in a different way, in both like in their best moments and also in their bad moments. And so like there was a lot of diversity and a lot of like just different exposures that I got working at a large agency that really like set me up to be successful when I wanted to transition out into a different role or like in a different department. And so then, I sort of hit a wall where it was like, I am not as fast as all these young guys are when we're getting into foot chases. I am not as like, my body just isn't working the same as it used to. And like, they're getting younger and I'm just getting older. And so I was like, I need to like reevaluate where I want to work and moved down to a small beach community where there was a population of like 5,000 people. Going from like 2 million to 5,000 is a huge difference. And like you get to know everybody on a very personal level. And so that was a huge change just in and of itself, just for the environment of like the folks that I was interacting with. So I go from like hard-hitting gang members, and then I go to like old ladies like taking their cat out for a stroll. And so like that it's just a complete 180 of the people that I was interacting with, and then also just like the the size of the agency, right? Like I went from like 1,000 person agency to a like 30 person agency. And so it's like that in and of itself was a whole microcosm of an environment of change and how you handle different scenarios and how you handle like working with one another, because you don't like your circle is a lot more intimate and everybody knows each other since there's only like 30 folks.
Point did you have that cop to corporate epiphany where it was like, okay, it's time for me to transition out of law enforcement now?
I think it started with all the civil unrest in 2020, right? Like that was a huge thing for a lot of law enforcement folks that were like it was a very tiring time. There was a lot being asked of us. We were working very long days. We were working very long nights, and I will never forget working 7 days in a row, almost like 15-hour days. It was just absolutely brutal, and I was like, this is just something that like I need to take a step back from, because like if this happens again, am I going to mentally and physically be able to actually do this? And so it's like, what is going to be most beneficial for me? So that's like sort of the reason why I went to a smaller agency, because I was like, well, there's going to be less chances of that happening there. It's going to be a better community. It will be a more like tight-knit community. And then one day I was just sitting, we have a bridge to get on and off the island. And I always sit under the bridge. And there's a four-way stop there. And I was like watching traffic. This person ran a stop sign, pulled him over. It was this little old lady, and she was just like very like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I didn't mean to do it. And she was like, and then she offered me a hard candy afterwards and was like, hey, here you
Cool.
go. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, what is this? And I just was like, I think I need to do something where I don't have to work overnight. I don't have to like get into fights with people that I don't want to get into fights with. That I'm like I'm not pulling over little old ladies, because like what's the impact that I'm having there? And it just didn't feel like it sat well with me anymore. And then also just like the pay, right? Like you're doing a lot of extra work and for a lot like a very minimal amount of pay, especially in North Carolina. Like we're not known for like the heaviest salaries in the entire world. So I think there is a accumulation of a lot of things, but that moment of like getting an old lady offering me a piece of hard candy was like the nail in the coffin for me.
Really cool that it's not like it's something crazy happened. It's not like you're just sick of your team. It's you trusted your intuition. You trusted yourself to know like, okay, I think that it's time to get out. And were you okay with it? Or were you like, what were your thoughts while that was happening?
Oh man, that's a very like that kind of just gave me goosebumps just thinking about it because it's so hard to leave law enforcement. Even though when it's like it feels like it's so suffocating, um, there is a genuine part of yourself that you're giving to the community and you're doing a lack of self-service, you're doing service to the community. And like for me, that is something that is like so important. And I love the fact that I was able to serve a community and be like that, like somebody in law enforcement being able to help keep other people safe. And that takes like a huge chunk of who you are to do that and continuously do that. And so I think like when I was like, okay, I need to change out of here, going through like the job interview process, very long process, took me several months, and then it happened, and I got an offer, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this what I want? Like, do I want to give up all of this like investment that I've done in my career, investment in the community, investment in like this profession? Just to change because like that's very scary just to like change completely 180 from being law enforcement and going into a tech job um and the emotional burden that comes along with that is am I going to be disappointing somebody? Am I going to be disappointing my family? Am I going to be disappointing like the community, like just in general? And that's a really hard thing to sit with. But at the end of the day, I had to make the decision for myself. And I was like, I know that like for me, I need to make a change and I need to make a positive change. And joining a company was going to be something that's going to benefit me better in the long run. But then you also have to think like afterwards, the that emotional burden of like being always on a swivel, always being like basically trying to like look for situations where you're going to be mitigating danger. Your body starts to go through a complete change internally, and you have to be ready for that. And like that's something that a lot of people don't talk about is like when your body starts to relax from being always hyper vigilant, you go through a lot of changes. Your sleep changes, your personality changes, your mentality changes, and that's a lot to consume in a very short amount of time. And sometimes you have to embrace it because if you don't embrace it, you're going to push it down and it's going to make it way worse.
So how did you come across the opportunity at Flock Safety? And were you exploring other options along the way, or what about Flock stood out to you?
It was they were a vendor of ours when I at the smaller agency that I worked at, and I got to utilize the system pretty frequently. And I was like, oh, this is a pretty cool thing. I would love to work with that company if that's something that I could do. And so I started like looking at their job postings, and was like, "Ah, I don't know if I'm like cut out for this. And it like just talking with some of the folks and networking with the folks there of like, yeah, this is something that you can do. This is like something that like you would be good at. Really kind of drew me to like that crowd because they were also super supportive and all like very just wanting to see me succeed and they hadn't even met me yet. Like these are just like cold emails that I was sending via LinkedIn and getting these responses and people being like, yeah, absolutely, let me talk to you, let me chat with you, let me get you like your foot in the door, which was like just so helpful and so I appreciate all of those people that responded to me because it's like it's not easy to like send out a cold call email and be like, hey, you want to chat with me and take up time from your busy day? And so I think like just even before I got there, the fact that people were so welcoming and wanting to like see me succeed really drew me to Flock. And like the fact that that still continues as I've been here for 2 years has been something that's been like monumental for me in terms of like the support.
Oh, was it just Flock that you applied to, like, or, and over like what period of time were you still a cop when you were applying? Like, what did that look like?
Oh my gosh. So it was a mess. I'm not gonna lie. Like when I first started looking for a job, I didn't know what I was doing. I was sending out my cop resume to like a ton of people. I didn't care what it was. I was like, my world felt like it was on fire and I needed to get out. And the only way I could think of was I just need to apply to these jobs and hopefully I'll get something. And so it took a very long time in order for me to realize, all right, this is my approach of shotgun methoding is not like the best way to do this. And so solicited the help of some like career coaches, some folks that could look over my resume and like really helped me bring myself up to that corporate standard of like, yes, you've been doing all of this stuff, but that doesn't always translate over to your resume, and that doesn't always necessarily mean that the company that you're applying to understands what it is that you were doing. So being able to like have that mentorship and that helpfulness of like, hey, this is how you would translate this cop jargon into a corporate jargon, so that way folks would understand. As soon as I did that, I started applying to uh, more focused companies like Axon, Mark 43, Flock Safety, stuff along those lines. And then as soon as I had submitted my resume for Flock Safety and Axon, I immediately got interviews like within a couple of hours. And so went through the process with both of them, got offers from both of them, and then ultimately went with Flock Safety because it just, like I said, the support has always been there for even before I was an employee, and I just really loved the interactions I had. So I'd say like it was a huge mess. I tried to like get as much out there as I possibly could, realize that was the wrong method, and I needed to recalibrate and reconnect with other folks and like figuring out how they did it. And that's what made me more successful at the end of the day. It was because I leaned on a community of folks that is pretty strong, especially within LinkedIn, of like just all the folks that have been previously law enforcement wanting to help see those other folks succeed.
You have made a couple really good points. So, networking on LinkedIn really helped you, connecting with the right people there, not doing the shotgun method because I don't know anyone that that's worked for. And then also making sure that your resume isn't just top speak. And there are a lot of really good um, people and resume companies out there that help, turn cop speak into corporate. Because, like, what do we know when we're leaving? We don't know what they want, right? And yeah, I'm assuming for you that finding flock was important because you felt that camaraderie still because they're in the law enforcement world and because you probably work with a lot of former cops too.
Yeah, and I think like I felt like I was going to be able to bring value from my former law enforcement experience to the company, and it's only like that's only been shown to be true, right? Because we've helped spearhead a law enforcement employee resource group. I've helped create sessions for folks that have never had any type of law enforcement experience to understand like this is what a chief of police does, this is what a lieutenant does, this is like the common jargon that you're going to hear when you're having conversations, especially when you're doing sales conversations and how to navigate those challenging conversations, and also just like understanding the psychological like components of being a police officer. There's a lot that goes into it, and the way that we perceive the world around us, it needs to be tailored. Your sales pitch needs to be tailored to that, and your behavior also needs to be tailored to that because as everybody knows, a cop can smell bullshit from a mile away. And if you're doing that, you're not going to establish credibility and you're not going to be able to get those sales closed. And so, like, for me, like I felt like I could bring that, and I have been bringing that, and I think that's something that is very important for me because I also didn't want to lose my roots to law enforcement because it's been such a massive like part of my life that I wanted to be a part of a community and a part of a company that was going to be working with law enforcement closely because I felt like if I were to go to some place that sold paper, I don't know if I would be as excited to go to work every day like I am now versus like where I currently am.
You wouldn't want to work at Dunder Mifflin
I was like, what is a paper company? I couldn't remember one. So Dunder Mifflin.
from The Office.
Yes,
Great
love that.
show. Well, it really sounds like you're thriving. So let's talk about that employee resource group. So what does that provide for the cops that work at Flock Safety?
Oh man. So this is very exciting because we started off as like a just a group of people that were in a Slack channel of like, hey, this is a we're all former law enforcement and we want to like, share some stories. We want to share things about like our past. We want to like commemorate fallen officers, especially like recently fallen officers. And then also just like we have like a fallen officers fund. So like we helping like with when a customer experiences a loss in their department, then we help support them with that. We submit like a form and Flock Safety does like a card, and they also do some additional stuff with the departments to help make them feel supported. And so that's how it initially started. And then a group of us got together and we're like, hey, we want to make this into an employee resource group. We have so many law enforcement officers here, prior law enforcement officers here, that there's a need for it because when you get out of law enforcement, there is a complete transition in terms of like how you're communicating with people, how you feel about yourself. You go through an imposter syndrome process. There is so much of the mental health components of it that we needed to be there to help support that. And we were seeing it because people were asking like, "Hey, can I chat with you? Can I chat with you? How do I find my purpose again? How do I find my value again?" And that's really hard to hear because it's like, that those folks have made such a massive impact in their community and they've done some really amazing things. And then now they're struggling with that identity crisis. And like for us, that's something that we really didn't want to see anybody struggle with because we all have struggled with it ourselves. And so we were given the opportunity to become like an affinity group. So basically, it's a pre-group to an employer resource group, and we went through the process of like making sure that we started doing engagement with the broader community, making sure that we were starting to get engagement within our own community. And then after the trial process, we recently were granted the employee resource group status, which now like we're going to be working really closely with a lot of our other internal stakeholders to like expand the knowledge of like what does law enforcement bring to the table and like what are the skills that we can have and provide to the company, and also more support for the people that are struggling with their mental health. We've established a mentorship program where we've got new folks that are coming in that will be assigned to like a seasoned person that's been at Flock for X amount of years or X amount of months, and that's that person's buddy. And so you hold like regularly scheduled meetings with them, help them develop themselves personally and professionally, and making sure that they're feeling like they're being included. And then like helping like a majority of us have already gone through either like a migration, meaning that like we went through one role into another role. We've either been promoted or we've had like some type of role experience change. And so helping them, those new folks that are coming in, get that at the same experience, because that's also important to us as well, of like making sure that they're thriving, doing good things, and feeling like they're bringing value, because that's super important for a former law enforcement officer. Of like, you want to feel like you're providing a service to somebody. You want to feel like you're being included and that you're providing that value to what's being accomplished. And so now that we've got like this full status, like we're really ramping up the mentorship program. We're really ramping up like where we want to be in the community at large, and like also the folks that are outside of law enforcement or outside of the flock community. Like we want to start helping those folks that are trying to look for the transition opportunities. And how can you do that? Because we've got a lot of really good information from a lot of our employees that we currently have of how they've transitioned out of law enforcement and how we can help them be successful. And so those are just a couple of things that we're working on currently, and like what the impact has been within the company.
Well done. So I think a lot more companies could use something like that. That's incredibly, I mean, that's beautiful and that's so helpful to the people that are getting hired on with Flock that they have resources like that. It seems like you've really taken advantage of your law enforcement background and brought it with you to this new, well, it's not new company, but to the company outside of law enforcement. And you are just, I don't know, you're using everything you know. And I love that you can still do that.
Yeah, and I think that's also just important for me, right? Because like I
Yes.
service to me is so important. And so when I'm able to help somebody, even like even in a small way, that's so significant to me. And I think like being in this employee resource group and being able to have that direct mentorship and giving those new folks the skills that I gained, is only going to make them more successful. And that's like at the end of the day, like I will always forever be an FTO. I always want to see somebody do way better than me, and that's all I ever try to do is like make these folks better than who I am, so then that way they can be successful and go on and have a really valuable and like prosperous career. And so like that's all of our mindset, especially the like the leaders within the ERG group, is like we want to see everybody be successful because we've been successful and we know what that feels like, and we want everybody to have that positive feeling when they are a part of our company.
Just warms my heart. That makes me really happy. So thank you for doing that for everybody there. And last question. What advice would you give to cops who are considering leaving law enforcement or who have left and are completely lost and don't know what to do about transitioning and finding a job?
I would say do like the one thing that I did was just sending out emails or sending out messages on LinkedIn to folks that like have former law enforcement experience at companies that maybe you're interested in. There's a lot of folks out there that are also really helpful with transitioning out of law enforcement, and you can find a lot of them on LinkedIn. And like though I would say like that is probably the biggest piece of advice that I could give, is because they know what the ins and outs are. They know how to go through that process. They know what exactly it is that you're feeling and how you're feeling about getting out of law enforcement. And they can also help you with that, like just processing those feelings and processing those emotions, but also helping you process how to submit your application, what needs to be a part of the application, what does your resume need to look like, stuff along those lines that seem really small and nuanced, but make a massive change in how you're going to be getting a response from those people that you're applying with.
Yeah, it's stuff that we don't often think about. A lot, we don't think about it. So there are a lot of good people to follow. I would say that you're probably one of them. Cop to corporate, of course.
Of course.
Um, yeah, but any other words of advice?
I will say we are always hiring. So if anybody is ever interested in getting a job at Flock Safety, we are always hiring. We have a obviously a job board. So take a look. And if anybody is listening to this and they have any questions about it, they're more than happy to. I'm more than happy to answer whatever questions. You can reach out to me, and I'll do my best to help navigate that process for you. So there's a ton of people out there that want to help see all these folks that are leaving law enforcement succeed. And I know it's a scary time, but there's a lot of support that's behind you and wants to see that success come from you.
You are metaphorically the old lady with the hard candy.
I am. Yep. I've turned into the old lady with a hard candy. And if anyone
Maybe
wants,
you're inspiring people today. Maybe you're the hard candy today. So, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your story and insights with us today. If you're a former police officer thinking about what life after law enforcement looks like, I hope that this conversation with Chris gave you encouragement and ideas for your next chapter. We are super grateful, Chris, and I can't wait to continue to see what more you do at Flock.
really appreciate y'all having me. I think it's a great honor to be on this podcast. So I really do appreciate you chatting with me today.
Thank you. See you guys next time.
This video was recorded and produced by Just Talk Studios, the premier video podcasting studio in Bellevue, Washington. Visit justtalkstudios.com to learn more and book your session today.